My name is Gwendolyn Bach. I'm a professor here at Pace University in the English department. I have also taught a Harry Potter class like James, so that was a lot of fun. So let's introduce you all to the Potter Pundits. Right next to me is John Granger, prolific author. John's been writing and speaking across the country about J.K. Rowling's novels. He's published books including How Harry Cast His Spell, Unlocking Harry Potter, Deathly Hallows Lectures, Harry Potter's Bookshelf, and most recently a non-Harry Potter book related to something about sparkling vampires. John's most well known for not discussing vampires, but discussing the alchemical scaffolding of Rowling's novels and elucidating that for everyone. So welcome, John. Okay, next to John is Travis Prinzi. Travis is also an author. He's published Harry Potter and Imagination and been an editor and contributor to Hogshead's Conversations, which you can also find an essay by me in, and also John and James. So it's kind of
all four of us, one book. There's only like 5 copies left.
So buy them now.
Same one for me, too.
Okay. Travis is also the blog master and writer of Hogshead Pub, where we have smart talk about Harry Potter with some of the brightest fans in fandom.
That's true.
Excellent.
Oh, and you also have your own podcast
Yes, I do.
called the Pubcast.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. All available on iTunes. And certainly last but not least is our good friend James Thomas. James is a professor of English at Pepperdine University, where he's taught since 1981. James's wonderful book is called Repotting Harry Potter, and it is right in front of him, the green book, very nice. James has also spoken around the country on Harry Potter and taught classes at Pepperdine. And he is well known for saying that the series and why some people, crazy people, don't like it is because the books are too recent, too popular, and too juvenile. But we know that's not true. So without further ado, there's food over there. There's also books over there, and let's get started with the podcast.
All right, thank you all for coming out. I want to thank you people, but recognize a few people who made this happen. Obviously, Pace University. Thank you to all Gwen and Tom and Nancy and everybody else who contributed to this piece. Also, the group that shall not be named should be mentioned. They helped out with the live stream tonight, and of course, the Leaky Cauldron. Without these people, this doesn't happen, so we're glad that they are here. Now, we are going to talk about Harry Potter is great literature, which is a very convenient topic because we can pretty much say that and then talk about whatever we want. And we probably will. So, but let's start with this. I mean, we're talking about Harry Potter is great literature. I'm going to throw this question out to the panel here. We're going to take questions. We're going to blab for too long, and then we're going to let you ask questions. But let's blab for a while first. Why even ask that question? Why do we have to ask that question in the first place? Is Harry Potter great literature? These books have sold like over 700 million copies, 750 million copies, something like that. Seems like a no-brainer. These are some pretty good books. What are we talking about when we say is Harry Potter great literature, and why do we even have to ask this question? Why is that question controversial? And let's kick that over to James to start.
I don't know when I first had the thought that 3 major objections among academics could be classified as the academics' 3 Deathly Hallows, but it was a nice number. It was a nice number. The phrase was on my mind in 2007, and so that's how it started. But I really believe that sincerely, that there is a great deal of resistance to books that can be so immensely popular among millions of people translated into so many languages. I think there can be sort of an innate resistance as well that they are children's books after all. Their recent nature, well, I think I mentioned in my book that most of the days I've taught the Potter books at Pepperdine University, I have driven a car to class. It's older than the books. It's a 1992 Acura Integra, a serious candidate for Pimp My Ride. Each of these areas of resistance, each of these kind of areas of negative inertia that one encounters in the academic world, I try to address and try to answer. We all have over and over. There is such a thing as an instant classic. I think if I'd been alive 401 years ago or so to read Othello or Hamlet, I would have known that it would last forever. If there is such a thing as a writer being for children and for adults. Carl Jung has written about the eternal child that lives in every adult. I think these books miraculously excite and evoke that child in the adult, and as well as appeal to the adult in the child. Its popularity, the recent nature of the books, the not really juvenile nature at all of the books. All these things belie what one would think in the academic world, what someone like Harold Bloom would almost inevitably in the summer of 2000 conclude that certainly 37 million, I think, American buyers of the books at this point can be wrong. I think that's the title of the Wall Street Journal article. Can 37 million readers be wrong? Yes, is the answer. C.S. Lewis said that a book can be considered great if it makes you a better, wiser, and happier person, and secondly, that you really like it. I like that it's liberal enough, and I think C.S. Lewis is an academic, a solid academic enough person that we can appreciate that generalization. And I think Bloom's version of that is it's a great book if it makes you better, wiser, and happier, and if he really likes it.
The part of James's Deathly Hallows that I think is the core of the objection is the juvenile part. Too popular, too new. This has been written by an Oxford Don. It had been a psychological novel and had its popularity. I don't think it would have been that much of a problem. The fact that it's accessible, it's a schoolboy genre, it seems to be meant for children. It's been a real objection. When I started writing about Harry Potter in 2002, I wrote a book called The Hidden Key to Harry Potter and some friends in Washington State published it. It sold 5,000 copies in about 7 weeks, which for a self-published book is I have thought this was normal. People write books and they just sell like that. But I sent it to a professor at Wheaton College, and he sent it back to me unread and said that it was essentially, it was not worth reviewing. And then made a comment about it in First Things Magazine saying that people have sent him notes saying that these books are based on literary alchemy, and that has some relevance to its meaning. And he laughed about people taking these kind of books that seriously. And I heard a lot of that. These juvenile books could not have a Shakespearean structure about the apotheosis of the character when it's a schoolboy genre. This is basically Tom Brown School Days on steroids, or on broomsticks, I think. That resistance seems to be from the fact that it was considered to be a kid's book. But what's funny about that is they knew, the booksellers knew after Prisoner of Azkaban that more adults were reading the books than children. So already they knew by the time 2000 when Harold wrote his essay.
And they split the New York Times bestseller.
That's right. They decided they put it on the to create a juvenile list to say this belongs in this category. I'm not going to spend all day talking about this, but it does have something to do with the fact that in modern academia, there are two types of books. There's the modern psychological novel, and then there's genre fiction. Genre fiction is everything except for the psychological novel. Fantasy, romance, everything else falls into those categories. And you can't take genre fiction serious.